There's recording fees. You get a fee to, charge that your house got recorded with the sale with the county, and you're like, really? What? Yeah.
Hi, and welcome everybody to the Housing Tips. It's the show where we talk about housing news, housing information, and everything in between. I'm your host, Eric, and joining me once again is my co host, Jesse. How are you today, Jesse?
Doing good, brother. Man, I'm liking we got the spiffy shirts today. I'm already losing my train of words.
Oh man, no, I definitely think that we got to look professional. It's filming day. No, this is entirely random. I just happened to be throwing on a shirt today that I felt like, why not? Let's make it fancy today. But I like your shirt more.
Love it, man.
Awesome. Well, speaking of being fancy today, we wanted to talk about three different tips on what you should do before purchasing a home loan. How does that sound today, Jesse?
Sounds good, man.
Awesome. Well, let's start with tip one, Jesse. What is that first tip?
Well, tip number one, what popped into my head was understanding your closing cost. I don't think that is a topic that a lot of people will kind of research. Usually it's kind of like the down payment, usually it's like my credit, but understanding your closing cost is really important. You know, how that can affect your overall budget. And I'll tell my our viewers to budget for those additional expenses. That can be from like 1% to 5%, 2 to 5% of the loan amount. And so what comes in regards to closing costs? That's loan origination fees. So charges for processing that loan application. There's appraisal, there's inspection fees, that costs to evaluate the property. There's escrow fees. That's the company that's handling the transaction. There's recording fees. You get a fee to, charge that your house got recorded with the sale with the county. And you're like, really? What? Yeah. And so a lot of these fees, plus sometimes you have to do like reserves, a certain amount of like homeowners insurance and taxes and all that stuff. And so you gotta also budget for that piece and take that into account.
Oh, definitely. And that's something that even I had to deal with as well when buying my first property is that those fees aren't something you can typically roll into the loan. A lot of those you have to come with the cash to pay for that. One of the biggest ones, especially before, is being able to have your home inspected. That's something that can't be rolled into the home payment. It's something that you have to come up with, and right there, that's could be a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 just to have your
Yeah.
home inspected, which we highly recommend. Something that I know that's big on social media is everyone's saying to waive your home inspection. I 100% think that a home inspection is extremely valuable. It's 100% worth the money. It might not seem like it's a lot at the beginning, but spending that extra, couple $100 to $1,000 to get a home inspection is gives you valuable information on the property.
No, yeah. Every time it's advising to do a home inspection. One thing's when you go and see the property, and then very different when the inspector comes in. The inspectors that I'll use, they'll go down into the crawl space. They'll see how the foundation is, the plumbing. They're trained to really assess everything. You'll get a full report of your property, and so just upfront what type of work it's going to need. Very different when we just kind of visually look and like, oh yeah, it looks beautiful, right? But we're not seeing in regards to the attic, the plumbing, the electrical, the foundation, and so that can save you a lot of money up front as well.
No, 100%. That's something that happened to me as well, is that what was found on the inspection report, we were able to go to the seller and say, "Hey, XYZ is broken, needs to be fixed. Is there a way we can negotiate on the price? Is there a way you can give us a little bit of credits? Is there something you could do for us?" And yeah, the seller said, "Yeah, sure. Based on this, we'll give you XYZ. We'll do this for you." But then sometimes, it's just a recommendation. The seller could just say, "Nope, take it as is, or we'll go with another buyer." So take it with a grain of salt, but depending on who the seller is and depending on the market, especially with the market perhaps shifting a little bit, that it may be time to ask the seller for different concessions and move things around a little bit.
So it's good to budget for these closing costs because buyers, they're the ones who are going to cover that majority of the closing costs. But keep in mind as well, sellers can also contribute. Your real estate agent is able to try to negotiate and trying to see how the seller can contribute, how the seller can like help pay down certain costs, and that can help with your closing costs, with your loan, with any other stuff that you may need. And so, but you want to budget that according at the very beginning, because if you're thinking that it's already going to get covered, you get locked into a property that you really love, and the seller's not going to negotiate and give you that closing cost, then you're at a standstill and you can't get that property. So you want to factor all that in the beginning.
No, 100%. That's something to think about before even taking on the loan and even the steps way before that as well. Uh, for the next topic, Jesse, what is our second topic?
Or a second topic is to budget out your realistic, finances. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like tips or kind of what to do in regards to budgeting?
No, definitely. That's actually something that I did extremely tight when I purchased my property. What I did was I went through every single line item of purchase that I could do throughout the year, everything that I realistically purchased, not saying, "Hey, ideally, I don't need to go to Costco. Ideally, I don't need to buy gas." But in a perfect world, that doesn't happen. And so, what I had to do was I built an extremely tight budget and even moved up a little bit of items. So if I typically spend $100 on gas a month, I'll say, hey, I'm actually spending $200 a month on gas. But since that all leads into when you get your loan, you might be qualified for a much higher loan, but realistically, you don't want to be at that high number. Sometimes you just want to be at the lower number and you want to be able to feel comfortable moving into a property and not feel like you're really stretching the bank because anything can happen when you purchase a property. Something can break. You might need to buy, new tires for your car. Something might happen, and having that extra wiggle room in the budget is much better than what you could be qualified for with the home loan.
Yeah, and I know that's not usually like fun topics to talk about like on a Friday night, but really assessing your financial situation is crucial. Your expenses, listing all your monthly expenses. So, housing, utilities, groceries, transportation, insurance, debt, or just kind of fun spending. And you're really able to kind of see, okay, what are my expenses? Like he said, what am I able to kind of like move around? You know, am I able to kind of start saving for a down payment? How much can I afford? How much can I set aside is it each month, and set a savings goal and timeline to reach it. I've had clients that reached out to me, and maybe at that moment it wasn't their timeline. I was like, let's set a budget, let's set like a goal. You'd be surprised how like 2 years are going to go quick. And then they were working on it, and then it was just like, hey, like I think I'm ready. And I was like, wow, like I felt like we just like recently just talked. And so how you're able to save for that, factoring closing costs as well, 2 to 5% of the purchase price, and then just ongoing costs, right? Ongoing costs, maintenance, repairs, expenses, and seeing if that's a timeline that's going to work with you.
No, 100%. And I say it every single time is that especially budgeting is just one of the most important things you could possibly do. But moving into our last tip as well, Jesse, I know we put it down as down payment assistant programs, different tips in there. Jesse, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think, the last tip as you're applying, for your pre-approval, how you're able to research different loan options. If it's FHA, first time buyer, if you're a VA veteran, or if you're a conventional loan, seeing how different options may suit different like financial situations, different goals, and even asking that lender at that time, like, hey, like, are there grants that are available? Is there down payment assistance that's available? And that could be huge in like getting you into a property. Maybe you have enough for you know the closing costs. And if you're able to get a grant to assist with the down payment, and maybe the rate is not as high, you're able to get into that property sooner than waiting, until you kind of structure all your finances. And so by that time, then, the goal is you're already into a property, your equity is already, going up, and you're able to you have that flexibility with your property of moving things around. If it's refi, if it's, pulling money out, you're in a fixed state versus, I always say, renting, you're paying 100%, right? The kind
Yep.
of right.
You're paying a landlord 100% of your payments and they'll never come back. Actually,
Yeah.
so interesting that you brought up down payment assistance programs is that when I purchased my property in California, they had assistance programs that just took a few extra steps. There was some that give you like up to $1,000 to help with those closing costs, inspections, just for going to a class on learning about mortgages, learning on how to pay your mortgage back, learning about the rules, the do's and the don'ts. Something as simple as just going to a class for a few nights a week for a few months, they give you $1,000 back. There's your inspection right there. So
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the 1,000 if I have to go a couple nights and I have to just kind of, move things around. That's huge, and especially right now, just kind of how finances are. That really helps. That makes a big difference. That's like two inspections, so you're feeling comfortable. Hey, two properties. I'm in escrow. I'm comfortable. If I'm needing to cancel, I got this funds. Now, if you're really tight on your money, you might feel a little bit afraid of like keep going on the process if you needed to cancel and you needed to keep going.
no, definitely. And that's something that people, anything is possible. There's always things to be moved around, grants to be had. Grants are also free money. I know as both of us went to college, we think that grants are like, oh, that's another loan I have to pay back. No, sometimes it's just money that's given by the government or given by entities that just want to get people into houses, especially new home builds. They give a lot of grants sometimes just to get those houses off the market, get it moving, get the ball rolling. So
Yeah.
it's fantastic to know. But Jesse, before I close out this video, is there anything you wanted to sum up about this video or any other tips or anything you want to do before we close it out?
No, yeah, I just wanted to just kind of for everyone to think not feel nervous or afraid when it comes to the pre-approval. I think that's a great time to just kind of set a plan, and talking to the professionals, and then having something in order where you're like looking forward to it, you're working towards that goal. And sometimes you'd be surprised, sometimes you think that you need to pay off certain credit or like this will help, and that could be structured like with your lender. They might be like, hey, don't pay this down, that may actually not help as much as you think, we can pay that off at escrow. um, and so I say first check in so you can kind of set that plan before assuming or thinking how things will be.
No, definitely. And that's great advice to know, though. And it's super important just for anyone that's listening who's on the fence about possibly buying a house but finds it daunting. That's what we're here for at the Housing Tips is to give information, give different news, and also tips to help make it easier for the home buying process or just learning about real estate in general. But besides that, if any of this information you found interesting, please consider liking and subscribing the video. But until then, thank you so much, Jesse, for your time. And thank you so much for watching.